Hello, welcome everyone to this week's episode of FireDEV, a fireside chat with people in the industry. Today, my guest is Marten Kuipers. Martin, how are you doing?
I'm all good. I'm really happy to be a guest here in your podcast.
I mean, it's great to have you. So, you work at DEPT as an art director. Do you want to, tell the audience a little bit about what DEPT is and then what an art director does?
Yes, of course. Like you can pronounce it as debt, so it's easy.
Makes it a lot easier because I didn't
Makes
want
it
to
a
have
lot easier,
PCs saying DEPT all the time.
no, you just can say Dept. And Dept is a digital agency with offices all across the world. And we do a lot from advertising to digital to commerce to branding to zero SEO. So it's a really wide variety of topics we're trying to hit. That's a
Okay.
short version. I can of course talk way longer about this, but
Well, I mean, we'll dive into that because I've got a
yes,
few
of
questions.
course.
But first of all, what does an art director in general do, and what uh, does an art director at Depth do? Is he a little different to a normal art director?
Yeah, that depends, of course, what you think a normal art director does. But what I can say about my role at Dept is that I have a mixed role. So I also still design, besides that, I have the role as art director. And what I do as art director is basically I'm involved in everything around design as well. So you can imagine like photography or typography or copy or 3D motion. So all the aspects which makes your design better, I'm also involved in that part. And besides that, I'm doing a lot for the outside world. I'm maybe gonna talk about that later. I'm a judge at several award shows and doing some talks here and there. And trying to keep the quality as high as possible within Dept, within the design team at Dept, but also showing it to the rest of the world. That's basically what I'm doing.
Okay, so you said you're part directing, part still getting your hands dirty in the art side of things. What's
Yes.
the split look like? Is it even? Is it 50-50, 80-20? And like what sort of other team members do you work with? Who do you feed this into? Like, who do you like report to? Is it like directly to the CEO? Is it to marketing? Is it another team? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so that's a lot of questions, of course, and I can answer them one by one
Of
because
course.
maybe it's good to explain how the structure at Dept is. So we are separated within certain departments. That's why it's also called Dept. And one of the departments is, for example, advertising. One is branding, and so on. And I'm in the department which does digital design, digital development. So we're doing websites and apps and that kind of stuff. And my role is a bit 50-50. So I'm doing a half of the week basically design work, and the other half of the week I'm more on the art directional part. And I think it's good to explain as well that my role within the design phase of the project is mostly at the beginning of the project. So setting up the visual style, trying to have the important workshops with the client, set up a concept, that kind of parts. So that's also what belongs a bit to the art directional role, because that's the moment where we decide on what kind of photography we need, what kind of color palette we need, etc. So all the stuff which is related to the brand, um, we touch in that part of the project. So it's a bit 50-50. And also I think I'm a lot involved in pitch work. Maybe I can talk about that a bit later, but so half of my work is also doing pitches for clients, trying to get them on board, adapt, and compete to other agencies and studios to get that client. So that's also an important part of my role as an art director at Dept. Yeah.
So, you mentioned that at Depth they work with like different brands around the world. Can
Yeah.
you talk about some of the brands, they work with and in what capacity? Like is it a particular like campaign that's publicly known or packaging or something like that?
Yeah, so because we are all over the world, we also work for clients which are in different countries. So the US department, for example, of debt is working for different clients than we do in the Netherlands, where I'm from. And for example, in the US, we work for Google, we work for Instagram, so big clients. But for example, in the Netherlands, we also could work for a small, I don't know, insurance company. So it could really vary, like the size of the client, and also depending on where it is in which country. So we are having more international clients here in the Netherlands as well. But I think that's also the reason because we started with debt in the Netherlands. So it's a Dutch agency, but now we are like in 15 countries. But it started all in the Netherlands. So we have a lot of variety in clients over here. And yeah, sometimes we switch, like for example, in Denmark, the debt office in Denmark works a lot for interior companies, like Bolia, for example. And yeah, sometimes we help each other on that kind of stuff. So that's awesome. And yeah, so we can work on different clients also in other countries if we help each other on projects.
So you mentioned, companies like, Google, for example. So they're outsourcing, some of the work to an agency, like
Yeah,
Dept.
yeah.
Why would a company that big outsource versus doing it in-house? And I'm sure they do some of it in-house. Like, what's the sort of split of, them outsourcing? Is it in an emergency they would outsource when the internal employees just don't have the time, or is it okay, this aspect or this sort of part of it we always outsource, and Dept is one of our agencies?
Yeah, I think both are true. And to be honest, I think it's not only with Google with that size of clients, but same with smaller clients. Like some clients have internal teams in house, like design teams, development teams, strategy teams. But for example, for a specialty, they are hiring a studio or an agency, maybe for something really specific. Their team has no skills in or has no time for. So then they hire an agency or studio like us. And also when some clients have really small in-house teams. They're working on the production on of an app or website they have, like continuously. Like for every little change, they will use their in-house team to implement that in the website. But if they want to have a fresh, new mindset and fresh new ideas, which are not coming from the company itself, but just from outsiders like us, then I also ask others, of course, because yeah, we are of course totally how do you say, like blanco, in this kind of phase of clients. So yeah, we're trying to come up with our ideas, not knowing, of course, the history that client went through. And sometimes that could be really refreshing for some clients, for companies to have that yeah, new mindset. And yeah, that's why they ask us for work, or they write a pitch, and several agencies are attending that pitch. That happens also a lot. Yeah.
So you obviously, you're talking about pitches. What are the key things of nailing a successful pitch?
Now, of course, I can't say that, but no, I can tell a bit about it because um, I think it's one is really important. That is listening to the brief to the client. You have automatically the feeling you have to redesign the whole thing, or you have to change everything. But that's a natural feel we have at an agency. Like we always want to improve things and want to redo things. But of course, lots of clients are not waiting for that, don't have the money for it, don't have the time for it, don't have the people for it to do such a major change. So they write a brief, and that's with a reason, because they want to focus on specific things. Because maybe the biggest part of their user journey is already done very well, and maybe they sell already very well, but they have just some minor things where they want to improve on, and then we come in. So it's, I think, always finding the balance between like surprising them and come up with new ideas, maybe bigger ideas, long-term plans, and of course the short things, the low key, the low hanging fruit, which we could implement directly for the client. I think if we find a balance in that for every pitch, doesn't matter if it's a 50,000 pitch or a 10 million pitch, it's always the same kind of balance you have to find. Um, and of course, the more pitches you do, the more clients you worked for, the more experience you have. So you know, like, okay, yeah, for example, when it's a web shop for shoes, you already have some ideas in mind, which you maybe did before for other web shops in fashion or footwear. So I think, yeah, I think finding the balance between that and not going too far, because that's, yeah, you know, I'm a designer, I have a design heart, so I want to improve everything I see. But on the other hand, maybe it sells really well what they have now, and then I come up with a new redesign and based on only a nice rational but nothing more than that, and then they will say, yeah, okay, thanks, but we are that's too tricky to try that, because we are selling very well. That's not the point of the brief. So yeah, I think that's where the magic happens. If you find a balance between those two, I think you can. And of course, we as Debt are full service, so we do strategy development, design, SEO, SEO, and yeah, content. So we can, you you know, like, we can mention every department in that pitch, that we can help them on every part of the project, and that's and every part of the brief, so they don't have to hire other studios next to us. We can all do it ourselves. So that's our pro as Debt, I think. But yeah, what I said earlier, that's, I think, for general, and think other agencies and studios will say the same. So finding the balance between long term, short term, and big ideas and small ideas. Yeah.
So it's like, providing a full vertical, solution for them instead of them just coming for you for one aspect. They know they can come for you if they need to for multiple different parts of the project so you can get that over the line where they need it. And then as a result, they're only managing one person, or like, they're only working with one agency instead of them trying to outsource something, relieve tensions on themselves, but then you've
Definitely.
been in a
Yeah.
situation where they're managing five agencies and they've basically created another job for themselves. Instead of technical, it's actually management now of the different agencies and
Yeah.
putting it
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
together.
Well said. Yeah.
Okay. And like this sort of, pitching, take a big company like Google, for example.
Hmm.
Is it just a matter of an initial pitch to work with the company, or is it per project, like the that you basically have to keep pitching? So if you do one project, 6 months later they've got another project. Do they basically make you do the dance again, or is it like, okay, we know your work's good, it's kind of similar, do you want it? Let's try and figure out a price and a time frame.
Yeah, I think that depends on the client. Some clients we are going to work for many years, so that's one partnership for many years. We decide on that in, for example, 2024, and then we can work for them till 2027. Sometimes that's the case, and then we are like doing everything on a digital in a digital field for them. But you have also clients which but yeah, mostly of the time the bigger ones who are outsourcing their stuff via different companies through the world, and don't want to work always with the same company, because then you probably maybe get too involved in the agency and maybe too dependent also on the agency, you know, like so they want to have multiple agencies where they work with. For example, they want to have a different agency for the advertising part, a different agency for the branding part, etc. So it's not that one agency does the whole job for every client. So that's, I think, part of the answer. And what yeah, I'm forgetting what I'm trying to say, but I think, yeah, I think that's part of the answer. And the other side is, I think, that we sometimes they want to have something really specific. So we worked, for example, for uh, the yeah, a big big store in the Netherlands, a big department store with where they sell clothing, etc. And they wanted to have something specific for the Christmas campaign. So we really had to, yeah, talk to them like, okay, we can do that as well, but we never did something similar for them before. We did other stuff for them before. So we really had to convince them that we are the one who also could do that with the teams we have. And so that feels sometimes like a pitch that you have to convince them again for because you're going to create something else for them, which we never did for them before. So sometimes that happens as well. And what also happens, and that's I think the last part of the answer, is that after 1 year or after 2 year, after 3 years, then some companies are doing the pitch again. So they want to have fresh ideas from new agencies and just want to be sure if they're still happy with the same agency or studio. You know, so they want to get some other agencies on the floor and talk to them and see like, okay, are we still happy with that, or is it maybe time to move on? And that's a little bit of a test because of course we want to keep working for them, so that's one thing. But also for them, of course, they also want to work with us because it's way too much work for many clients to on with another agency, especially when you have a long relationship with them. So it takes them a lot of effort and work to start all over again with a new one. So it's always a big of kind of a test to see if we are still matching, if we have the same ideas they have for their company. And I think it's good that stuff like that happens, that they don't have a contract with us for 10 years, you know. I think it's good that we, because it keeps us out also alert and, eager to create some new stuff for them and think about new stuff and not doing all the same stuff for many years again.
So, what sort of tools do you use as? So, actually, a two-part question. What sort of tools do you use as an artist at Dept? But then also, what sort of, tools do you use when you're doing the more like the directing, style? I'm sure there'll be certain tools that you use for that as well.
So two answers, of course. Like the first answer is the tooling, like for me as a designer, like Figma is a popular tool within the digital design world, where we create websites and apps with in design, so not code but only design, where we animate in. And besides that, we're using After Effects, Principle, Jitter, those tools also for animating. So animating our designs for development, so they know what we have in mind. um, and also, for example, when we have to adjust photos, we use Photoshop. When we have to create an icon set, we sometimes use Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator. So the palette of tools is big, and it's way bigger than this because like a UX designer uses more tools, like tools for researching or tools like Miro for doing workshops. um, and also 3D design, for example, uses Cinema 4D or Blender. We have developers who are, of course, having their own tooling, but also designers who are trying to bridge the gap between design and development, which are using Webflow and Framer, which are also tooling where you design in and directly have something built. So it's no code tool. You don't have to code yourself. It's of course limited, but I think it's also part of the future of design, where we do everything in one tool. So I think lots of tools are being used, and of course we use lots of plugins in different tooling. Um, but yeah, for me as an art director, I think the tools are less are not on the computer itself. It's more like thinking process. For example, I always have the same kind of way of work. It doesn't matter if the client is big or small, if the project is 1 week or 1 year. I always try to start with a concept, doing lots of research, read a lot, write a lot, starting to create a concept, a rationale behind everything I'm doing. So it doesn't matter if it's a button on a website or a photo or an icon or copy. doesn't matter. I'm trying to find a good reference, a good rationale behind it, and then I'm starting doing sketches, explorations, finding inspiration based on what I created or what I thought about. So that's a long process before I even start designing myself. So, or someone else designs because I'm only doing this part. So that's, I think, a different kind of tooling because it's just basically a way of work I'm always trying to use in my daily job. And yeah, I see slowly that lots of people are doing it as well at our company, also the more junior ones, and that's really good to see that yeah, we're trying to think about a general bigger idea than only like, oh yeah, I love this color because it's my favorite color and that's why I used it. So it's a bit more than that, and that helps, um, of course, explaining it to the client, also the client of the client, but also for us internally to limit our ideas a bit. And sometimes that's good to think about like borders you created yourself, and then yeah, design, create within those borders, because otherwise the sky is the limit always, and never something is good enough, or you sleep one night and then you want to redo things. So I think that's an important part of the process for me, and it's kind of my, you can call it my toolbox of things I'm doing. And then within that process, I'm trying to get in touch, of course, with a client, organize workshops with them, sessions, and we try to collaborate as much as possible because I think that's necessary during that phase of the project. Because if if they disagree with you, then you're lost, and the same it happens when it's the other way around. So it's a different kind of toolbox, but I think you can call them both tools because basically they are tricks to get what we want to create.
So as an art director, doing art and then also the directing side of it, I'm
Mhm.
sure you're very busy. So like, how do you try and effectively, you know, manage your time? Like, are there any particular tools? Are there like techniques like time boxing, particular calendars? I'm always interested in that. Like that's like I'm always trying to, be more efficient
Yeah,
and utilize my time better. So again, I'm interested for myself, but I'm also interested for the audience as well.
yeah, I think that's a brilliant question, because I'm also always struggling with that part already for many years. Also, before I was an art director, it's always a thing within, I think, our industry to time box, because it's all happening on your laptop. You can take your laptop everywhere, and you can basically work always if you want, 24/7. And that's I think a good thing, but also a bad thing, because of course the amount of burnouts is pretty high in our industry. You probably know that. And we, of course, we all want to prevent that. We don't want to get a burnout during our career. And I think time boxing is one of the things which is really important, but I think there's one step before that, and that's saying yes and saying no to things. Because if I say yes to everything, yeah, then the time boxing will be really difficult, of course, because then I said yes to everything, and then I had maybe 10 of these podcasts per week, and then I couldn't fit it anymore in my schedule. So I'm really trying to differentiate that and trying to focus on the things which I really like, where I get energy from, where it's really needed that I do it instead of someone else. So that delegating part is also really important here. Yeah, and saying no to things, because that's something I learned just a few years ago, that saying yes is not always what brings your career further or brings your skills better, or like, you have to say no to certain things to focus on the other parts where you can become really good in. So for example, I get quite a lot of requests for talks and that kind of stuff. but I'm doing that all on the side. So most of the time, besides my hours at Debt, doing it in the weekends, etc., preparing decks. And in the beginning, I was really happy because I wanted to say yes to everything, because I was honored that people asked me to do a talk about something. And so I said yes to everything, and then I realized that I couldn't do it all together because I had to work, and I had to work to prepare those talks, and I have to go there. So I had a big issue with myself because I couldn't reach all the deadlines I had, and the time boxing thing was not doable anymore. And it was even on a certain moment that I had to say to myself like, oh, tonight I will only work for 4 hours, not 5 hours tonight. And that's really tricky, because if you do that, then it already becomes normal to do overwork, to work in the evenings, to work in the weekends. So I think to keep a healthy work balance, I think it starts with saying no, and that's not like stopping your career, or but it's, I think, just a healthy way, and probably the one you say no to should accept that as well, because we all know that working 80 hours a week is not healthy. So I think it starts with that. But to answer your question, um, if you have a pretty full schedule, and I kind of have it, but also not, because I just told you, I'm trying to focus on the important things. So, for example, when I have meetings in my calendar for work, with a client or with colleagues, I'm always looking at it like, am I really necessary here? So that's one question. Could someone else do it if I'm not there? Which is maybe a better fit, or could do it because the question asked is not only for me, could be also be answered by someone else. So that's the first step I do take, like, okay, am I necessary in that meeting? I think the second one is, how long is this meeting? Because you have lots of meetings which are an hour or 45 minutes, and but maybe could have been done in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So I think that's also a really important thing. And sometimes you can adjust the meeting length yourself, which is, I think, ideal. But sometimes also during the meet, you say like, okay, I did my part. I heard what I wanted to hear. I just say during the meeting, like, okay, I have to go on with something else because, my time is limited. I move on. And that's not harsh or whatever. It's just like, I think that's how we keep the efficiency at Depth. And I think we're doing it pretty well at Depth. Of course, can always go better. And, especially the younger people have to learn this kind of way of work, or way of having meetings. But I think it's getting better and better, especially during the Corona pandemic. Of course, during COVID, we had lots of meetings because we were not at the office, and we had to do everything online. And that was a terrible time for many reasons. But one of the reasons was that we had a lot of meetings in our calendars, so we didn't have time anymore to design, to build, to whatever. We had a lot of meetings, and that was the moment that everyone got a bit sick of all those meetings. So we were really picky in, okay, do we really need a meeting? Can we keep it shorter? So I think we all learned, especially I think in my team, but I think also at other teams and at other agencies as well, that everyone was a bit like, okay, we have to be stricter in this. So I think that's one solution to time box better, because you're like, I don't know how it's in your calendar, but in my calendar, the meetings are always the hardest part. And then to close my answer, because it's a long answer, I realized that, but to close it off with, is that time boxing is also part of the projects I'm doing. Of course, if I do a project for a client and we have to deliver a website within 6 months or 4 months, then time boxing is all what matters. Like, they want to go live before a certain date because they have a big campaign launching or whatever, and then they want to, of course, reach that deadline within the time they have. So it's up to us to reach that deadline as well, together with them. And because we are working with many teams, with many people on a project, with 15 people sometimes, or even 20 people, everything should be aligned, and we have project managers for that, we have account directors for that, we are keeping track of that, but also the team itself, like me and like my colleagues, should be aware of the time every time again. So you can't spend 4 weeks on the concepting phase if you have 5 weeks in total for design. Then it's like 80% is full of concepting, and then you don't have time to design anymore. But if you have 200 weeks of design, then you can concept for 3-4 weeks, and that's totally fine and maybe also needed. So I think it depends on the length you have. You can time box it better, and especially when you have limited time. We always have limited time in our industry, I think. Then I think it's even more important to say no to things, to say no to meetings, to be more critical on that part. So I hope that answers a bit of your question, but it's of course my own, idea of it. I think if you ask someone else has different ideas about this topic, but this was it for me.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and I think a lot of people will have different ways of managing time. And the other thing is, it depends on your career. An art director at Dept might have to manage time differently to an art director at a different agency,
Of
or if they're
course.
not at an agency, if they're just at, let's say, Google, for example, even though
Yeah,
they might be doing similar work, the way they have to manage their time will might be different, and the tools they have access to. But then also your family situation as well, your personal life, all of that,
definitely. Yeah,
comes into play. And I feel like this is something that not only with time management but career choices nobody talks about, is that not everyone is equal, and this isn't about skill or ability. And even though again, not some people are better than others, that's a certain thing, but this is just about your situation. Somebody who you know doesn't really have any responsibilities in terms of taking care of people outside of work, or even just maybe married and one or two kids, is not the same as someone that might not have a father, they've got a sick mother, and they're supporting like younger siblings, and then
absolutely.
also
Yeah,
supporting their own family as well. Like, those are two very different situations, and you like the techniques for managing time will not work for both, and likewise the careers will not work for both. And I feel like this is something that education and companies as well fail to want to, like, they don't talk about it. And I feel like it's a very sensitive topic to basically, to say to someone, your situation probably, isn't suited for this. Like, it comes off as discrimination, even though you might be saying it for their benefit. Instead, it's a lot easier just to let somebody crash and burn and be like, okay, they weren't the right person, let's just get rid of them now.
yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do have a question, Rand. But when you were saying about meetings, one of the things is to learn to say no. So, are you important in that meeting? Is there someone else that could do it, etc., etc.? It's how do you navigate that? Because if you have a task that only you're doing, it's a lot easier to maybe push it off or not do the task, compared to, let's say, a meeting's booked with a client and there's two of you going or scheduled to go anytime, and you think to yourself, my colleague Bob is more than qualified enough. He's the main guy. He doesn't need me there, for example. How do you
Yeah.
navigate that? How do you say, I ain't coming, I've got other stuff to do?
Say exactly that, but then more in a more political way. But no,
Do you ever get pushback, like, no, you are required, or
yeah,
you have to come as well, because we're
of
both good, it's
course.
a team
Like,
effort.
sometimes it's also sometimes a different person can do the same task, but maybe sometimes it's better that I do it because maybe the client knows me, or I have more experience in similar topics or whatever. So then maybe I think like, oh, someone else could do it, and then I get to hear like, okay, no, maybe Martin, you're also the better one because this. So then, of course, I still will do it. It's more that I think you have to always be critical on that part, like just don't just say yes to everything, also when it's the nice things. Maybe it hurts your ego a bit that you have to say no to things where you got asked for, which are maybe really nice and to look forward to. But if someone else could do it also, or could do it better, and my time is necessary for something else, then you have to just give it to someone else. And that takes time, of course, when you're a student or a junior or whatever. Then you're maybe not thinking like that, and you are taking every opportunity and you want to do it all yourself. And maybe you're not, like, so open for other people, because you're so eager. But I think when you're longer in the field, you see that I think it I think it's good to also give other people the opportunity and chances, but it's also good to time box your time better, and yeah, focus on the things you're really needed for. And but like I said, yeah, of course there are always situations where where it results in something else, when a different person is needed and I was recommending, or in a meeting that meeting goes wrong, and then I still get invited to the meeting because it was still not the right person which was in the call, and not because I'm so good, but it's just I just want to give you an example of what could happen. It could, of course, also happen the other way around. But yeah, I think as long as we all keep critical, and I think that it's easier said than done, because lots of people will say and will hear this podcast and will say, yeah, I'm already doing that. But you have to think about yourself, like, are you really doing it, or are you also do accept things which you think like, oh yeah, it's just nice for my career or for my portfolio, or for my LinkedIn, but maybe someone else could do it way better than I would do it, but they just didn't ask that person. You always have to be critical in that, and of course you don't have to give everything away, because you have to learn yourself things as well, and take some new challenges. But yeah, it's good. Just don't say no directly, and also don't say yes directly. Always think a bit about it, yeah, if you're the right person.
So outside of your work at Dept, you're a judge on what the Lovey Awards, the Webby Awards, and awards with
Yeah,
3W. Then you've been a judge on some other boards, awards as well, and panels. So do you
yeah,
want to talk a little bit about what they are, and how somebody might get involved in it, and like what sort of position in sort of, I guess, in your career you need to be to you know
yeah.
be a judge.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, first of all, I want to say it's an honor to be a judge. It's a lovely work to do, really. And why is that? I think I always was on the lookout for nice things in the industry. I always doing that for many years. Also, when I was younger, and still studying, I was always looking at different agencies, studios, what they are doing, and I'm still doing it. Like, I'm not only looking at the work we do at Dept, I'm looking to the competitors as well. It's, I think, really good to have an overview of what's going on in the industry, and especially the new ones out there, the new studios popping up. It's really good to see where they are focusing on, and think about it, like how you maybe could implement that in your own agency as well, or getting inspired by it. So that was something which was already going on for me always, and at a certain moment, I realized that, like, I when you become a judge, then you pretty basically doing the same thing, but then you can also rate it. You can say like, okay, yeah, I love this case, or I hate this case, and that sounded really good to me, because I thought, yeah, that's given even more. Um, how do you say that, charm to this way of looking at other stuff. And the fun thing with being a judge is that you also see stuff you never saw before. You hear about agencies you never heard about before. For example, I sometimes have to judge the government website of Peru, or I have to judge a footwear brand in Australia where I never heard of. And I just see their website and I have to judge it on certain, categories. Sometimes it's motion, brand, UX, interaction, content, visual design. All those aspects you have to judge, and you give it a number, like a 6 or an 8 or a 2. And then it gets an average, and that's your final score for that website. And it basically works the same for many of those award shows. They have the same kind of way of doing it. And the nice thing is that you see what's happening all around the world, and what people are creating all around the world. You see also the cultural differences. I also noticed that Adapt, when I work with departments from India, or from the US, or from Denmark, Germany, they all have different styles, different way of working, different culture, different design principles. So that's also interesting to see. But besides that, in my role as a judge, you can see the same thing. And that helps me also because I'm looking through a Dutch pair of glasses, if you know what I mean. So I'm looking to a website for my Dutch background and from my Dutch standards. So when a website doesn't have enough white space, for example, and it's really packed, and a lot of things happening within your screen, then my heart says no, 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 you shouldn't do that. That's not the way of doing it. But in Asia, for example, in India, they have websites where they have a lot of white space. That's not done. They don't like it there. It's useless. They want to fill that space because the user looks to it, and they don't want to waste space. So it's a totally different way of thinking. So if I have to judge a website in India, I'm also trying to look through the India glasses. Like, okay, how is this still? Is this still good within the culture and the standards they have there? So I think that's interesting, and also a big learning for me. Every time I have to judge, it's once a year, and for awards with 3Ws, it's every month. I have to judge always with that in mind, like with the different cultures, different things. But of course, I got asked to be a judge, so of course I have to keep my standard as it. So, but I think I don't know, it's interesting to see what's going on in the world within the digital industry, and getting inspired by it's really nice, and seeing that those differences between styles, and not be limited to only the stuff you see here in the Netherlands or in Europe. So that's for me really nice, and hope to do this for a long time still, because it also is really doable next to my regular job. So it's not taking too much time, and that's perfect.
I mean, that was going to be my next question, was time commitment, because obviously, like the award, on 3W, they say you do every month. Like, what are you doing every month? Like, is it quick 5 minutes, or is it an hour? Is it multiple hours? Is the back and forth? Are you doing some sort of write up on the review? Like, what does it involve?
Yeah, I can explain that. So, for example, for the Webby Awards and the Lobby Awards, the Webby Awards is the I think the biggest award show worldwide for digital, for the digital industry. So, for example, also people who are hosting podcasts like you could win a Webby Award. So it's huge. Also, movies, for example, win Webby Awards. Actors, TV shows, but also websites, apps, AI installations, all those kind of stuff. So it's really big. They have lots of categories, and they have also lots of judges, because I'm not only the judge, the only judge, of course, because that would be really time consuming. But we are like with hundreds of judges all over the world, with different backgrounds, different skill sets. So that's, I think, good to keep in mind. And the same goes on for the Lobby Awards. And what you do is they have it once a year. They have an award show, And of course, you could nominate your case. We as DEP also nominate our cases for it, but lots of agencies and studios doing it, but also on the client and product sides, they are submitting. So they pay for it and they submit within certain categories. And what I'm doing is I get amount of 30 websites slash apps which I have to test. So I have to test them on all the categories I mentioned earlier, like content, UX, brand, etc. But also have to test them, like, okay, do they work on mobile really well? Is how is the responsiveness in general? What is the How is the website looking in different browsers? Is the app really working really well within iOS, Android, that kind of stuff? So you have to test it also from a functional perspective, and then you have to you get a form, basically online form, where you give a number to each category, and then you get an average score in the end. And then I have to do 30 of them, minimal as a minimal, so minimum. So I can do more if I want to, and I spent, I think, per website, let's say 20 minutes. I would say 20 per case, 20 minutes. So that times 30 is, I don't know, 2 evenings, you could say. So that's not a lot, and that's once a year basically. So it's pretty okay to do that, and it's really nice to do that. And for awards, it's different because you can judge the site of the day, which is the best website of the day, and that's basically going on every day. So I could basically judge every day, and then I have to judge like tens of cases every day because so many cases are submitted per day. That would take me a lot of time. So what they ask us to do is that doing it every now and then, like the daily award, so the side of the day, and then every month doing the side of the month score. So I get 8 cases, which having the best scores of that month, and I have to pick one of those 8 to which will be the winner of the month. And I have to do the same again, but it's a bit easier because I just have to vote, and that's it. I don't have to score them on specific categories, which is way easier for me to do that. But on the other hand, what makes it way harder than the webbies and lobbies is that the awards cases are way more qualitative. I don't want to disrespect the webbies and lobbies, but it's more like the websites and which are submitted for awards are already pretty good. You're also not getting a nomination automatically, so they are pretty good. So if and especially for the side of the month. So if I get the 8 cases for side of the month, I think 4 of them are really good, really competitors of each other. So it's really hard to choose. And for webbies, it's easier because you get so many different kind of projects, from Nike and Apple till the local clothing store in Belgium. So it could go, and then you have to compare those two with each other, and then most of the times it's the bigger clients have bigger budgets, so they will win. But awards is different. You see also lots of portfolio websites over there from people who did it themselves, and I'm always trying to not vote for them because they are their own client. So I'm more I'm more fan of the people who actually work for a real client, because that makes it always harder to create something beautiful and functionally working. So so that's different. And I want to highlight one other thing, and that's I'm also the curator at Dutch Digital Design. That's a community in the Netherlands where all the big agencies and also the good agencies are part of. So I think in the meantime there are 45 agencies part of Dutch Digital Design, of that community. And what that means is that when Dutch Digital Design is traveling through conferences and that kind of stuff and giving talks about the industry in the Netherlands, they will show cases and studios and agencies of their community. Um, my role as a curator there, what that basically means is that I help to curate the best projects made in the Netherlands. Doesn't have to be like Dutch clients, but it has to be done by Dutch people. So I'm involved in that, and this goes totally different, the whole voting system, because we have to vote as well. We have to select a winner, but we do that in person. So we come together every 2 months, and then we come together and with like one person per agency or per studio, and I'm from Dept, and then we come together and we talk about that specific case, and which is really nice because you hear literally their opinions from competitors in the field, from other agencies and studios. You hear their opinions about a certain website or app or installation, and that's really nice because you're like in person, so you can have discussions, and it's one evening in the 2 months, and it's really nice where other people come up with in terms of feedback, because in the webbies and awards you don't hear the feedback of other people most of the time. So here you do, and it's nice to have those discussions out there, and and you can imagine it's becoming a bit awkward sometimes, because sometimes it's a case which is done by one of the agencies or studios in the room. So then they want to defend their own case, obviously, and yeah, it could be funny because you of course still want to give feedback to that one. So I like that kind of way of judging as well. So and of course this all takes time, but it's not like it's not a weekly basis. It's just on the side, and yeah, again, I did it already before I was a judge, but now it's more in a more serious way, which I kind of like.
So you're also a speaker as well. Again, do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what sort of functions or events that you speak at?
Yeah, of course. To be honest, I'm not a speaker from nature. Like I'm not. I was not as a child someone who was always taking the stage or whatever. I hated it. I was way too shy, and I, especially when I have to talk for a group of people, even when there are two, three people, even when I know the people, even when it were friends or family, it was not nothing for me. But you have to do it in my work, in my role. So for example, you present for clients, and you have to sell your ideas or sell your design. And because you're doing that so often through your career, you're getting better in it. And when you get better in it, you also get a bit more confident about speaking, and that's how it a bit started with me. So but still, like presenting for a client is different than speaking for a big audience. So what I my tricks are a bit like, of course, I prepare it very well. So if I have to present somewhere, I prepare it very well. So it's not that I can't, for example, present without slides. So that's for me really hard. So I need slides on the background to talk about that, and also to refresh my mind. Like, oh yeah, I want to talk about this. For me, it would be really hard to do that without slides. So that's one thing. I need slides. Maybe it's also because I'm a designer. I want to show visuals. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, of course, I didn't start speaking for big audiences in the beginning. So I started when I got asked to speak on some things. They were really small, maybe at Dept where I work, where we had sometimes evenings with where we invited people from outside Dept to walk them through, topics, design or AI or a process. So it started a bit with that. Um, and then I got asked to do things like this, what I'm now also doing with you, podcasts, and or doing an interview with someone. So it started really slowly, and before I really had to start, present to a big audience. And I also remember that I said no to big events because I was too shy. And yeah, it was really tough for me to say no, because it was also a dream to be on a stage. Because it's not that I don't like it; it's just that I'm maybe not, I wasn't that skilled enough for it, or I thought it was like that. So that was for me a big, yeah, a tough decision to make, that I sometimes had said no only because of that. But yeah, in the through the years, I got better in it, I think, and also more confident, because maybe not even better, but I thought, okay, maybe this works for me, and it has to be really close to myself. Like, for example, this conversation is really nice because it's really close to myself. If you want to talk for 2 hours with me about like the Olympics, then I would have said no, because I'm not confident enough about that topic. I don't know every detail, I don't know every background story. So it has to be close to me. You have speakers who can talk about everything, and you have always those kind of people, but I'm not that kind of person. So it should be close to me, about design, about things I like, where my interest is in. And yeah, at a certain moment, I got the question to speak for a bigger audience, and that felt really good. Not in the beginning, because I was really nervous in the beginning, but when I closed my talk, I was really like, you have that euphoria moment. You think like, okay, I can handle the whole world, and but of course it's not like that, because one day later you're already again the same person as you were the day before. But uh, it started like that, and then I tried to improve my presentation. So I watched it back when it was recorded, to see where I could work on. But also I improved on my slides, on my deck, because sometimes it was way too long. Sometimes you missed a clue. Sometimes it didn't had a really clear beginning and a clear end, or one, yeah, what was the bigger idea of this talk. So I learned from that, and I trying to update my deck all the time. So I have presentations which I did maybe 10 times, 12 times, and I every time updated it with, and not only with newer stuff or newer cases or whatever, but really like the storytelling way. So I try to improve the deck, and that's what I really like. So when I because then the story gets better and better, in my opinion, and then it's easier and easier to tell. So if I have that, then it helps me to take the stage. And yeah, one of my highlights was last year, when I was speaker at Digital Labin, which is a conference in Croatia. And yeah, it was my first time speaking abroad, so that was a really big honor, and yeah, was really awesome to do. And also, I was of course nervous, but I had that story really good in my head, and yeah, that helped me a lot. And I did it so many times before on smaller audiences. So yeah, that helps me. And because I did it, I get more confident to do it again. And so that's what I like. But again, I'm not the type of person who would do this just like for fun. And I'm also not saying yes to everything. It's only when I really like it, or when I'm, don't have to do it about a topic which I'm not confident with. So yeah, trying to be really critical in that as well, to what I do and what I don't do. And yeah, so that's, I think, my experience with speaking. Little background story.
So you've got, a lot of experience. Previous to this, you've been a UX designer, graphic designer. All very, keeping with what you're doing, now. But before that, did you go to university, and did you study something that was actually relevant to what you're doing now? Because I've had so many people come on, and what they did at university is nothing to what they're doing now. They've done a 180. What was the case for you?
Yeah, no, I think my answer would be yes and no. I have to explain it, of course, but okay, maybe let's go 20 years back in time, because then I was 14, 13, 14, and I was always drawing as a child, always drawing, and making drawings of cars, of houses, of people, of sneakers. I was always drawing, and not only in my free time, but also at school. I was not paying attention enough to the lesson, but I was drawing in my on paper and in my books. So that was something where my teachers didn't like. They said, yeah, where are the answers on the questions? I only see drawings, you know. So I was that kind of child, and from that moment I knew I want to do something within the creative field. So I knew that on a young age, but I didn't know what, because I like drawing, but didn't want to become an artist or something. I also knew that I was not that good, so I wanted to do something within the field. I didn't know what it would be. And then I did my school, and at a certain moment I also noticed that I was not made for school. I couldn't pay my attention enough to the lessons given by the teachers, and it was like I also learning from the books and doing lots of homework in the evenings. I was not the person who could do that really easily, so I had to spend lots of time on it, and still got a bad result on my test, for example. So that was a bit like it felt like failing, of course, and especially within that time, and also within that age, it felt like failing, because you want to complete your study successful. And I had to, like, at my 16, 17, I had to leave school before I get my reach the exams, which was really sad. And the plan they had for me, like, oh, maybe you should go to um, the graphic design school, because I could move from my study directly to that. Even when I didn't finish it, but I could move directly to that. And my mom said, like, okay, yeah, maybe that's something for you, because you're always drawing, and maybe this is something you're drawing on paper, but maybe you can do it on a computer as well. um, so I went to those days, when a school opens the doors and gives information about what they offer. So I went there, and I fell in love. I thought, okay, wow, this is what I want to do. And they showed me how they created logos for companies. They showed me how they made an illustration, and I thought, wow, this is finally the type of people I want to meet. And they told me, like, oh yeah, we don't have that much books, and you don't. And I thought, yeah, it's got better and better, like a child in the candy store. I felt like. So I started doing that, and I got energy again, because of course it felt like failing that I didn't finish my study. So I went to graphic design, and I thought, yeah, this is something for me. And I did that for 4 years. I did lots of print back then. It was way more popular back then than the digital field. And I did a lot of print. I designed brand identities, books, magazines, flyers, that kind of stuff. No digital. Even I didn't want to go to the digital field, because I thought this is way nicer. I could select the type of paper I want for my poster. I could work with content which will never change, because it's print and they will print it and it won't change anymore. And so I didn't care about digital design. I also heard about tools like Flash and Dreamweaver, and I thought, oh no, that's nothing for me. Like I have to, and HTML, CSS were nothing for me. Like I thought, okay, let's keep it. Let's keep graphic design in my skill set. I don't want to extend that to other things. And funny enough, in my last year, I thought, okay, what should I do now? I got some job offers at graphic design studios, and at also at print, at more like the typical advertising studios, where they did lots of posters and flyers and that kind of stuff, a bit old school, you could call it. But they were not, the studios I wanted to work for. I always had the feeling I want to go to the big city, or it's Amsterdam in the Netherlands. It's a big city. In the rest of the world, it's not. But I want to go to Amsterdam. I want to go to the big city, and I was living in this village. It didn't feel good to move on to that kind of companies. So I wanted to study more, and I started to do studying multimedia design. And multimedia design was a study on a higher level after graphic design. It was funny enough the level I wanted to reach after my exams on the in my earlier life. So funny enough, it all came together again. I did the same study I wanted to do, and but then yeah, via a different way, I still got where I wanted to. So that was funny. And then I did for 4 years. I did multimedia design, and what I learned there is way more about digital design. So even when my interest was not really there, I got interested because of I saw motion, and I thought, wow, things could move. How awesome is that? And then I saw people designing websites from big agencies in the world, and I thought, wow, could you do that? And I looked at agencies like Stink Studios or um, um, brand companies like Collins and Gretel and Design Studio and Dixon Buxy and all those big agencies in the US and in elsewhere in the world. I looked at up to them. I thought, wow, this is also design. It's not only the book or the magazine or the poster. This is also design, and I could admire it more and more. And so during my studies, I did projects which were related to that more. So trying to do more things within that field, which was really nice. And I got to know some good people where I worked together with, because the whole study was project based. So no exams, no tests, only projects, like almost like an agency. So the gap between my study there and the agency life was in that sense really small, because I also worked on projects there with teams, with UX designers, strategists, project managers. So which were of course all students, but still we all had our own role within the project. I learned about advertising during that study, also about print, but mostly about digital in the end. Like I thought, this is new for me. Um, and what I learned there as well is that you need to learn a lot before you can focus on one thing. And so I tried to do a lot of different things out there, of course within design, because I knew design was the thing I wanted to do. Didn't want to become a developer or a strategist or something else. I knew that I wanted to do something with design. So I did some internships. I moved to Amsterdam for my for internship. So I was looking for a house here, and yeah, it's a 2 hour drive from where I come from, which is really long in the Netherlands. It's not really long, of course, worldwide, but in the Netherlands it's a pretty long drive, and so I had to move here. And yeah, and I fell in love with Amsterdam, but I also fell in love with the industry culture here, with the so many digital agencies here. And I did my internship as a UX designer, funny enough, and not because I wanted to become a UX designer, but I knew that I needed that skill set also to become the designer I'm now. So I wanted to do focus during that internship on that aspect. And in my next internship, I focused way more on graphic design, on branding, on a bit on advertising. So I also knew, okay, I also need that in my later life. So I think that's also an important decision I made both times, that I focused during my internships on things I needed, but not on the things I maybe liked the most. But I thought I need those skills a bit before I really start in this world as a junior. So and then I got hired at my last internship for a full time job, and I was really in doubt if I should do that, because I had in mind like, okay, no, I want to explore a new agency again. I have to I want to learn new people, get to know new people, new skills. But no, they gave me a really nice opportunity and a lot of freedom to learn, and a nice mentor, and I learned a lot there. I met a lot of friends I still have, and which was a really nice start of my career. And then later on I ended up at Debt, and the rest. But it all started like that. So, and I think it's I also know a lot of people who didn't knew that they wanted to become a designer at a young age. I think I knew that, but I just didn't know what kind of designer. And I also had lots of interest in architecture and in fashion at a young age. So I still didn't know what where I want to focus on. And now I'm really happy with that I didn't know it back then, because I got to know lots of other fields during my career before I ended up in the role I have now.
So as a an artist, especially when you come up, one of the important things is a portfolio. What are some of your tips to creating a good portfolio? A particular platform. How do you go about it if you're just starting out? Obviously, if you worked at 10 year for 10 years at five companies, you probably can put together a portfolio if you don't already have one. But if you're 22 years old, you just graduated, you're trying to, stand out. Portfolio be one of those things. So how do you go about it if you don't have the experience? And then, like I said, what tool do you use? What would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a lovely question. I get this question a lot, by the way, also from the students, from people who are working on their portfolio or need a portfolio. I kind of always answer the same thing. I think um, lots of students, lots of people are trying to put a lot of work in their portfolio. Not only in the because they are designer, not only in the design of the portfolio itself, so of the website or whatever they are creating it in, but also in the cases and in the and so they come up with 10 or 12 cases in their portfolio, because they want to show their variety and skills. They want to show where they are capable of. They want to show what they all have done. And most of the time, they are also proud of it. So they don't want to get rid of projects out of their portfolio because they think, oh, no, 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 I spent so much time on it. It has to be in there. So my advice would be, let's keep it within 3 or 4 projects, 3 or 4 cases in your portfolio, and nothing more than that. But make sure that these four are really different from each other. So not for if you applying for a digital design role, not for websites for commerce brands, because they are all similar, and I don't want to see that. So I also want to see, for example, an app for a zoo, or a brand identity for a furniture brand. I want to see various cases, so I can see that you can deal with different kind of briefings and projects. So that's important for me, and I think for lots of people in our industry, to see that variety of skill set, because you always need that a bit. Um, so I would keep it within 3 4 prefer. And why I'm saying that is that if people apply for a role at Dept, you're not the only one. Like you're together with hundreds of people who are applying, and that's not because it's Dept, but lots of agencies deal with that, because lots of people nowadays are designers. And I want to highlight a bit on that, because um, you know it's really easy to become a designer nowadays, and it's now because of AI and because all the templates available, so you can create a portfolio within 2 hours if you want to, because you can download all the cases, put your own photos in it, put your own text in it, change the color, and it looks like a complete website, and you can all download it. You have many platforms where you can download full websites and apps in directly the design tools you need. And also, it's same with a photographer. If you're a photographer and you have a portfolio, yeah, it would be weird, right, that you download a lot of photos from stock photo sites, put it in your portfolio, and say, I'm a photographer. Of course, you want to know the story behind it, because that's where you test it. That's where you test the skills of the person. If you ask someone like, "Oh yeah, what's the story behind this design?" and then they say like, "Oh yeah, I'm not, I'm not sure. It was something like this, and I used that color because it was there and there." You already feel like they didn't think about it too long, which is also a minus for me, or they got those designs from somewhere else. And I sometimes literally see it. I sometimes literally see designs which I recognize from templates, and they only change the photo or the text, and that's really sad to see, because sometimes these people are okay-ish, like they are not bad designers, but they just want to extend their portfolio, and they add a case like that to it to show the variety. So you have to ask them about their way of work, about the process, about the rationale, about maybe the role they had in the project, about the collaboration they had with the client or with the other people who worked on the project. So I think that's really important that you ask that during job interviews. So that's my advice, of course, to all the people who do that. But for the students, make sure that you, of course, create your own work. That's really important. And also make sure that you also add one minimum of one project to the portfolio which is not done at school, which is not done at an internship. Because when I'm going through all those portfolios from people, I see also lots of the similar projects, because they at school they have always the same kind of briefings. So I already recognize, like, oh yeah, this is the topic they had last year as well, that study. It's sad, but it's like that. Lots of schools do the same kind of briefings, same kind of assignments for the students. So you see it in their work as well. So I'm always asking, like, okay, maybe one or two passion projects. That would be so awesome to see, because I'm not really focusing on the design part then, but I'm focusing on, like, why did they start it anyway, and where does that passion come from, and how much time did they spend on it, and how was it to deal with that, and how was your discipline to work on that within your own time. And it's not that I want to work them in their own time when they work at depth, but it's just I'm curious, like, what is their thinking process, and where is their real passion. Because you also sometimes see that people have lots of cases in the portfolio, but in the meantime, they love to do quite some other work, but they just didn't have a chance to do that. But you only knew that because you talked to them. But if I have to go through all the portfolios online and I'm not talking to them, I only see maybe 4 web shops, but they just wanted to do a brand identity, but they never had the chance. So it's good to, tell that, and ideally show that in your portfolio, where is your real passion, where your real interest is in. So that, I think that's a important aspect while building a portfolio. And in terms of tooling, yeah, you have a lot. You have tools like Samplis, which is a WordPress template which looks really good, by Tobias von Schneider, which is a famous designer within the field. You have Squarespace, which is more common, and you have ReadyMac. Lots of portfolio websites where you can download a template or create something yourself, and put your cases in. And But you also have, a Webflow and Framer where you can create your own website in. If you don't have the development skills to build your website yourself, you can use those no code tools to do that. For me, it doesn't matter if you have a PDF with your portfolio, or a nice show reel, or a website. That really doesn't matter for me, because we all know it's really hard to come up with a portfolio. You don't have the time for it in most cases, because you have a job, or you have a full-time study, so you don't have the time to create a whole portfolio and update it all the time. Especially when you create a website, it needs a lot of work, and if you write lots of case studies, also it needs lots of work. So I'm okay with that. It doesn't matter in which format you show where you're capable of. But of course, you still have to show where you're capable of. If you show me a show reel, yeah, like, of course I love it to see your work, but I don't know the background story. So I need that. I need your rationale. I need your the reasoning behind it. I can't judge on only, the looks of the work, because it's the same with the webbies and the lobbies, where I'm judging for. It's the same. You have to read the background story. You have to read where they came from, what the briefing was. It's really hard to judge only on the looks. That's For me, it's really hard. Of course, it's also easy to judge on the looks, because you can say, yeah, I hate it, I love it. But that's also, then it's becoming on, like, then it turns into an opinion um, yeah piece. And that's what I don't want to. I want to have facts. I want to see what the impact was from your work. I want to hear what you learned from it, what you would do different next time, and how you work with other people, because sometimes you have people who are really good on themselves. They have been freelancing for a long time, or they worked at small studios where they were the only designer, or at client side. And if they apply adapt, of course you have to work within a big team. So I'm curious, like, how would that work? Can you delegate a task? Can you give tasks to someone else? Are you open for feedback? So a portfolio is way more than only showing a nice website to me. Like it's the whole package. And Yeah, the best thing to do that is showing that package on forehand and not during the job interview, because that's maybe too late, because the first selection will be made only on what you're submitting, and of course your CV. But not, if you give me all the rationale behind it during the job interview, yeah, then that's already step two, the job interview. It's not step one. So yeah, I want to be clear on that. That Yeah, just be transparent in, and don't lie. Don't never lie. That's rule number one. Never lie about your portfolio. Never say things you already can do but you can't. Never say show a portfolio case where you say like, oh, I did it myself, but you didn't, or you had a really little piece in it, a little part in it. That I'm not a fan of that at all. So be transparent, and I even admire it more when people say like, "Oh yeah, my piece was this, and the UX designer in the project did this part, and the project manager did this." I admire that way more than people say like, "Yeah, I did it all myself, and it came from me." And then later on, you hear you did it, the person did it in a team. No, I'm so be honest, be transparent, and I think you come way further with that. And I think it's also, you have good self knowledge. You know where you have to work on. You know, yeah, which things you shouldn't work on because other people are better in it. Yeah, I think that's a long answer to your question, but I think it's a general advice to all the young people out there.
So, I mean, I've got a couple of questions, linking to that. So, you were saying that when you like interview people and they have a portfolio, you can tell that they've just used templates online, which said there's nothing wrong with it, but they haven't put that much, work into adapting that template. Whether you can just kind of tell from the conversation, whether you've literally seen it and you're like, oh, yeah, but I know where that template is from. How
Yeah.
do you handle a situation like that? Do you call them out, or are you a bit more like nice about it? Because I know there'll be some people that will literally just call them out and make them feel really bad about it. Because, like I say, even though they might be decent artists or even great artists, but just to pad out their portfolio, they might have added in there. So, how do you handle it?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. It's not that I say "fuck you" and leave the call. It's not like that, because I also know most of the time where the frustration comes from. Because I was a student once as well, and I know that you're really depending on the people you work with, and also on the projects you got from your school or from your internship. So especially for the young people, I know the struggle. I know that you want to have a portfolio, but maybe you're better than your portfolio. Sometimes that happens. You just didn't work with the right people yet, or you just didn't get the right brief yet. So, but it's of course really hard to know that on forehand. It's hard to know that because yeah, only based on the portfolio they are sending me. So when I have that feeling, of course I invite them for a conversation on the adapt. But to answer your question, um, it if I notice that they use something from another agency, or they use a template, or something from another designer that I recognize stuff, and you see it happening a lot. I want to give you an example before I answer your question. I half year ago, one of my one of the people I'm following via LinkedIn, also a designer. He's a freelancer, and he created a portfolio website, which got really viral because he had a really nice portfolio website, which is the structure was well, motion was nice, cases were also good, but especially the portfolio website itself was really nice. And what people did was stealing, literally stealing his portfolio website for their own portfolio. So and not stealing in terms of, oh yeah, use the same layout and the same grid and same, but literally stealing the whole thing. So they only used their own cases in it. And how did he find that out? He looked at the code, and he just searched on that code which websites did have that code, and then he came to the conclusion that like tens of websites from other designers in the field had the same code. And then he looked up and he saw that they literally the same website, but then with their own photo and with their own text in there. So he was really like, what the fuck, like people are stealing my design, my portfolio website. And I posted this on LinkedIn because not to bully the people who were stealing that. That was not the intention, but to start this discussion, because you can also think like, oh, it's an honor that people stealing my design. And when I posted this post got also a bit viral on LinkedIn, because I got hundreds of responses on my post, because not everyone was agreeing to me. My opinion was like, no, you shouldn't do that. If you're a designer, the best thing is that you can create something yourself. Why would you steal anyway? Like, what is the benefit of that except time saving? And lots of response, because lots of people disagree with me, because they said, no, you should look at it differently. It's an honor and it's really good that we uh, um, um, use things which are already done before, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's a Dutch saying. I'm not sure if it's in English the same. So we don't have to reinvent that. um, we can just use something which works really well, and we use it again. It's the same what a lot of web shops are doing. Like if you look at Amazon and competitors, they also use the same kind of tricks and systems. For example, Samsung and Apple, their product pages look similar in a way. Like they have the same tricks to convince the visitor to buy something. So they are, you can call it stealing. We can also call it like, okay, they use some principles or like patterns which just work really well. But for me, the difference is that this was literally copied. It's not just like, oh yeah, this call to action works really well, so I use it as well, or this header, or this carousel, or this case overview. No, they literally copied the whole website, and there were even examples in there which literally copied some cases of him. So they didn't work on those cases, or they just copied the whole case in their own portfolio, which is also stolen by the same one. So, and then for me that goes way too far. So to come back to your question, when I see that, and when someone has it in her or his portfolio, I always just ask. I just when I notice it, I just ask like, okay, how did you came to this design? Yeah, and then they come up with a story, and I ask further and further, until a moment comes that they are silent. Like they don't have an answer ready, but they should have. Like if they worked on it, they would have the answer, but they didn't have the answer. And that's basically my way of let them thinking about their own decision, where they put their case in. I'm not saying anything about it anymore. I'm just move on to the next case, or move to a different topic or subject. But I just let them think about like, hey, I don't know the answers. And then probably they think like, oh yeah, I know why I don't know the answers, because I partly stole it from someone else, or I stole it fully from someone else. So, and it's not that I'm, the bad cop, which is like, oh yeah, this font I saw before on, you can't. No, stealing a font. No, it's not working like that. Of course, you can use the same font, the same color palette, fine as well. But as soon as things are, too many things are coming together and are similar as someone else, then for me, of course, that feels wrong. And yeah, sometimes I could be wrong, so that's why I'm always testing it, asking them a lot of questions. And if they still have a good story till the end, then maybe they were right and it was just a coincidence that they had the same kind of case. But in most times it's what I already thought it would be, and it was it was too similar. And what I also had once, which was kind of funny, that we had two people applying at debt, and they had the same case in the portfolio, because they worked both on it, and they when you asked them about the responsibility, about what their role was, they also answered the same. And then of course that couldn't be good, because one of the two was lying. And so yeah, but don't say it directly in the call, because that they are fragile, like these are young people and they also have to learn from their mistakes. So just ask them and make them rethink their own decisions, and yeah, hopefully they won't do that again. And you have something else, and that's a totally different topic, and you can unconsciously you can take someone's ideas or design. But when you do it unconsciously, you never do a full copy of it, because that's not possible. You only take maybe some parts which are not you didn't unconscious, you didn't know you were using it. And I'm totally okay with that, because that happens. There are so many designs and websites and things out there, and the more the longer we have internet, the more websites we will have. So it will get worse and worse and worse, and especially with AI, because that's a new factor in all this. You can create a website with AI within seconds based on a prompt. You can just write a prompt in tools like Dora, where you can write a prompt and get a website within a minute, and a whole sitemap and structure, and you let the copy do with ChatGPT, and you let the images do with Midjourney and DALL-E. So then the whole thing is done with AI. And then again, my answer would be the same. I would ask about the rational, the way of work, the process, the people they collaborated with, their role. So I think that's the solution to these cases where people, using something which doesn't belong to them.
So another thing that you mentioned was team size. When you're interviewing, somebody, somebody might have worked at a company where they was like the only designer, the only artist there. The team, the company might have been only 5 people in total, including themselves. And then they get to a company that might be 1,000 people, 100 designers, 10 on just on a single team.
Yeah.
All these different processes. Trying to get a role when you're in that position. I find it's a lot easier going down that if you've been in a big company and have experience in those processes to go to maybe, let's say, a startup or a smaller firm, you probably can have less resistance than the other way. So, how do you recommend somebody that knows they're talented, is talented? So, in terms of the technical ability, they can do the job. They believe that they will fit in fine. Like they don't foresee that as an issue, but they've just previously the previous roles, whether they've only been in the industry for 2 years or 20 years, if they've just been all smaller roles or smaller companies, how do they navigate that? What one, I guess, with the recruiter first, because that's something that a recruiter will be like, oh, you haven't worked, a large company, you haven't worked at a company that's in finance or banking or whatever. But even though you're just doing, UX design, you're not trading stocks or anything for them.
Mhm.
So how do you, handle that? I mean, like, how do you, what do you recommend for them to make them more employable and come across so they can showcase that, I can do this. I have the ability and I have the soft skills as well, I believe.
Yeah, I think the last thing you're saying is that would be my answer as well. The soft skills, because soft skills are is something where a lot of people not focusing on too much. They think, especially within the designer field, they think like, oh, with my portfolio, with some beautiful cases in there, I'm there. You know, like I will be hired. They are really confident about it, and I know I experienced multiple times at my at Dept, but also at my previous companies, that hiring a really talented designer uh, uh, um, uh, doesn't have to be the good decision. If someone is not capable enough of presenting to clients, or is not capable of working together with other people on the same project, or to delegate tasks, or get feedback, or give feedback, or like explaining their design decisions, or all those things are soft skills, and they call it soft because yeah, the hard skills are tooling and working with briefings and that kind of stuff. But soft skills sound like, oh, that's not that important, it's soft, but it's maybe even more important than the other part, especially when you're more mature and you're longer in the field and you're applying for a senior role or media role, or director role. Soft skills are all what matters. Like if you're not capable of doing all that kind of stuff, you're not there. So for me, if someone applies who works only at one client in his life, for example, for a clothing brand, and he did the website for that for many years and updated it every half a year, and then he applies adapt, where you have to do lots of projects within 1 year, and for different industries and different clients and within different teams. That's a big difference, of course, with the previous company. And for us, it's of course, we have to get used to a designer like that, but also the other way around. For him or her, depth would be also very different what he got used to. But it's not that we say no directly, because probably that person also have lots of skills maybe a person which worked at for different brands and different agencies not has. Probably he knows how it is to work with lots of politics and stakeholder management and getting things done when you're so close to the brand, to the maybe to the decision makers within that brand. So and maybe work within a big design system, or dealing with that things are not going live soon, or dealing with that you have to make lots of variations before they pick the right one, and build it. Um, you have a long brief probably, because when you work at the client side, most things will take a longer time because they will make the right decision, and yeah, every decision costs money, or could cost money. Um, so all those skills and knowledge they have, it's really interesting for us, of course, to see, hey, how would they deal with that knowledge on a short-term project for a different kind of brand. We are also kind of interested and curious to that, like how they would implement that skill set in our project. So it's to answer your question a bit, it's not that we only want to have people who worked at similar agencies for similar brands, and because that maybe we don't even want that, to be honest, because they probably fit in very well, but they maybe are not having that surprising element in their skill set or in their knowledge. And it's way more interesting when they, for example, have a branding background, or maybe they did art school. That's way more interesting to see, hey, how does that fit in, and does he or she match with us, and the other way around. And sometimes, it could go wrong. Like we also sometimes hire someone who's maybe not the best fit from both sides. maybe wants to do different kind of projects, different kind of like tasks. And yeah, maybe it could go like that, and then they leave the company, or we have to let them go. um, Sometimes happens like that, and then yeah, it was the wrong decision, but we tried it at least. And it was interesting, because even in the weeks or months that person was here, they gave us new insights, and I think we did the same with him or her, the other way around. So for me personally, it's really interesting to see that people from different backgrounds applying at us, and that's where we have to think about, like, hey, how can we fit that person in? And I think fitting that person in is really important aspect, because if we see that someone is really well in the more experiential projects, like the WebGL websites and that kind of stuff, we want to give that people the same kind of projects he used to and he's good in. So we're trying to see if we, with the projects we have adapt, we can fit him in the right category of projects. If we think like, oh no, someone is way more product focused, maybe he has a product design background, we think, okay, maybe we put him on a long-term project. Long-term is adapt, this could be a year or 1.5 year, and maybe that fits the best to him or her. So we always, when we hire someone, we just don't hire someone who can be planned on every project. We already know that and that's also because we have a big team. That's the benefit of a big agency. We can already say, like, okay, on these kind of projects, probably this person will shine the best. So I hope that answers your question a bit. That they don't have to work on something specifically before they apply at us. It just, they can be themselves, and we see maybe, some challenges or some interesting things in their skill set or in their knowledge. So they don't have to learn a lot. The only thing I would say is indeed the soft skills. So do some presentation trainings when you think that, yeah, you're not good in that, or you don't do that a lot, because those are needed. um, but yeah, like I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, if you want to work at us, first do a lot of freelance work on the side, because you need that kind of cases to apply at us. No, 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 it's not like that. We want to give everyone a chance. And yeah, personally for me, I always like it when people have something really different as a background than the depth kind of agency where I'm in.
So next, AI. Obviously, you've touched on AI, a lot, and how it's taking the industry and the world by storm. A lot of people are using it. Do you use it? What tools do you use? And like, how are you approaching that going forward? Because I think it's safe to say that's gonna be part of most people's daily job, at least, especially, let's just say, in the technical field. Every day you're going to be using it on some level, just the way as an artist you would use tools like Figma and Photoshop and Sketch. You would use those tools, and if you think you're not going to, that's just you know craziness. So yeah, AI.
Yeah, yeah. AI, it's such a big topic. I think we could fill in a whole episode, a new episode with
Might need
this.
to bring you back just for AI. Yeah.
But of course, I try to keep it short now. Yes, I'm working with it. My interest with AI started at the same moment, I think, when a big part of the world started using it, and that was when Midjourney and ChatGPT got launched. I think it was 2 years back, something like that, maybe even longer. But and that was a special moment, because that was the first time for me as a designer that I could visualize my ideas, my imagination, by just writing some words, and then I got something as output. And it started for me just like as an hobby, and I was like one of the early. I could call myself one of the early adopters of Midjourney, not officially, but as soon as it got launched, I was using it. And the fun thing was that it was really bad in the beginning, really bad, and a lot of people were skeptical because they thought like, yeah, if this is the quality we would get, like then then we have to wait for many years. But then 1 month later, there was already a new version of Midjourney, which was already way better, and so on. So in the 2 months later, got a new version, etc. And nowadays, 2 years later, 2.5 years later, we got really good quality, and not only with Midjourney, but also with ChatGPT, with video tools like Runway and Luma, and so it got better and better. And also, the big companies are using it. Like you have Microsoft Copilot, and you have, of course, Apple is also working on some AI stuff. You have those little products like the UI pin, and the rabbit, and that kind of things, which are also fully based on AI and on voice and on so it all happened really fast. And if you now look at the landscape of AI, you have so many tools. I still remember the moment that I could keep track of the AI tooling 2.5 years ago. I had the feeling that I had the overview of what was there and where we were still limited. And now you can create everything with AI, and AI is slowly integrated in most of the tools. Also funny to see because first it were all separate tools like indeed Midjourney and which was running on Discord, and you had DALL-E uh, and ChatGPT. They were separate tools, and now it's getting integrated in tools. Figma is doing more and more with AI, and they will launch it soon. Funny side note is that they got complaints about certain outputs that Figma gave. So you could, for example, when you created a weather app with AI, you got exactly the iOS weather app as an output. And the more you try to do it, you still got the weather app of iOS. And it looked so similar that Apple was complaining, and and also the Figma community was complaining. So they had to stop the whole beta and rethink and rebuild things, because they were literally taking things from other brands, other companies. That's of course not how AI should work, and Midjourney and all those companies also get lots of complaints about that. uh, Lots of complaints about that, because like lots of photographers were saying, like, oh yeah, my photos are used for the style of the images. You had once a game designer, I remember 2 years ago, whose name was used in prompts, and that's why he didn't get that much work anymore, because they just created his game artist work, his game artwork, just themselves with his name in the prompts. And you see it also with more the popular names, like famous fashion designers or architects. You can just use them in the prompts and get output. Oh, I saw the connection was a bit
Yeah, it seems
unstable.
okay.
Oh, it's still straight.
It
Okay.
just dropped out a little bit, but
Yeah, yeah,
it
no,
seems
no worries.
okay.
Okay, okay. So that was a sad thing, of course, that people were offended by that, and yeah, no one could really check it back then, and I think still they are really fake about it. Like, where is all the data coming from? What is the data set they are using to build this whole library with? And yeah, it's still a bit fake, but I think on the other hand, there are still a lot of positive notes. Um, a lot of positive notes about this, because like we are using AI also in a really smart way. And yeah, so that's an interesting aspect to see what of an interesting thing about AI. What you see nowadays, that we come from far, and now it got better and better and more realistic. And fake news is already there for a long time. It's getting easier and easier to create that. And yeah, I can talk a long time about this, because I sometimes give talks about AI as well. But to focus a bit more on your answer again, yes, I'm using AI in my daily work. So it started as a hobby with just some fun things. Then at a certain moment, I discovered that the quality got better and better, and I used it, for example, for an art direction of the project I was doing it back then. I was creating a photography style for a client. We needed a photographer in the end to shoot everything, but I needed placeholder images to work with in my designs. So I thought, yeah, I could go to stock photo sites. I could go to photographers, which maybe I admire or I think it would be a best fit. So I looked for that kind of photography normally, but now I could go to Midjourney and create a whole set of images I could use in my designs as a placeholder, which is nice for the client to look to, but also nice for the photographer, which will shoot in the end, so they have an idea what I have in mind. So in terms of styling and lighting, etc. So that's how I use it. But I also use it from a conceptual perspective. So if I have to think about a good storyline or whatever for a user story, user journey, or a rationale behind a certain decision, I also use AI to come up with ideas, like just brainstorm with me. We are together, we are brainstorming. And I see, and that's how to wrap this up. Sometimes I see AI as the cheap and 24/7 intern. You have almost an intern which always helps you no matter what, and they're never complaining. They always deliver. And yes, maybe it's not always that good as you would expect. Sometimes you have the same with an intern, but it's learning and it's getting better and better. And the more,
It's game better very quick.
yeah, it's became better really quick, and you, because you're using AI, you also became better with it really quick, because you know how to use AI and when to use AI. And some people say, like, yeah, AI will get taken over by, or people will get taken over by AI. But I think people who will use AI will get taken over. It's not my quote, but it's a quote which will be used a lot. And I think that's indeed the case. We all should embrace AI. It's just our little friend, our little intern, and I think we should use it in a beneficial way, that we can focus on the right things, and they can do the more maybe the more boring things, or the more easy things for us, so we can focus on the nice things out there. And I think that's how I see it, and we all should see it. We should embrace the crafts and the skills of people, but AI is just our little friend, which helps us during projects and maybe during life even.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I know what you mean. At least for now, it's definitely a tool, and for the foreseeable future, it's just a tool that people will use to enhance what they already do, like kind of tools like computers, like software, like electricity. That's all it's going to be. But I agree. I want to get you back onto the podcast again. I want to just focus on AI. I feel like there's a lot that
Yeah, you
you
should. You
can
should.
really uncover for the audience, and I'll be interested in having that discussion. So yeah, just to wrap it up, uh, AI is definitely here. Midjourney, ChatGPT, Dolly, Gemini, and Claude, just
Yeah,
to name a
yeah.
few. I recommend people listening to the episode check them out. And I also want to thank you, Martin, for coming on to the podcast today. So, thank you very much.
Of course, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for tuning into this week's episode of FireDEV. I'll see you all in next week's episode. Take care. Bye.